Thank you, friend. Shabbat Shalom. Greetings to you all. Always a pleasure to see you. I hope you've all had a phenomenal first day of spring, first day of the year, and have been creating the year you want. This Sabbath coming up is day 8 of 12, and it represents the 8th month of the year, the month of Scorpio. Now, remember, the ancient calendar was zodiac based, and that's how the months were understood. And Scorpio is a day for the examination of what we hold on to emotionally. It's particularly about the hurts that we don't let go of, the intensity of the feelings of our lives. And our feelings are intense, my friends. It's also a fantastic day cosmically for sexual energy, so have a fantastic time creating the second half of the year you want. Now, this week's show is going to be just a little bit longer, maybe a lot longer, because I really want to spend a lot of time on Passover and the Seder. So the first 10 minutes, let's say, or 12 minutes will be about this week's Torah portion, and the following 20 or 25 minutes will be your 20-minute Seder. So you could stop it partway through and watch the rest next week, because, or you could just watch the whole thing through. Anyhow, I leave it to you. Now, friends, we talked last week about sacrifices. And my young friend Noah realized he could stop trying to, like rack his brains understanding all the types and the reasons and the mechanics of this foreign concept, which seem to be all that is talked about in these parts of the Torah. And friends, instead of trying to figure out what qualifies on the list of sin, guilt, offense, grain, and other offerings, hey, I'll tell you right now, our understanding of that life is so far removed from it that trying to fully comprehend the differences can be a pretty hard thing to do. And Noah realized instead that sacrifice is about your setting right the cosmic damage that you have committed, the damage we do in our thoughts, our words, our actions. And yes, my friends, that is what sacrifice was about. It was a mechanism for identifying guilt and obtaining forgiveness for it. We've also talked about the 4 basic daily elements and how they would remind people of their sacred use, and how we can reconnect to the magic and miracles of the universe when we use them. Fire. Now, in ancient times, it had daily use. We notice it much less today. But when you light a candle, strike the match and be whisked back to the Sinai Epiphany, my friends, and witness again as God announces the 10 words. Blood, the life force of animal and human. When you eat meat or fowl or accidentally cut yourself and see the life force coming out, think of the sacredness of life. Oil, when you make your salad or take an aromatherapy treatment, take a moment and anoint yourself, as was done in holy ritual. Right? This is just reconnecting to holy ritual. The anointment of the king, the anointment of the priest. These are things we do all the time. And the easiest one is with water. Wash your hands and notice the water pour over you. Cleanse yourself. As man has cleansed himself from the beginning of time, we wash away the daily world and take ourselves back to the beginning of life, the primordial force of creation. Now, you may want to make these a part of your regular regimen, my friends, and reconnect to sacred and holy anytime you want to enter the tabernacle of your heart, of your soul. Now, friends, this week we're in a really unique situation, a pretty good one, actually. Much of this parsha is actually a repetition of things we heard. Someday when we're dreaming deep in love, not a lot to say, then we will remember things we said today. Well, maybe not quite, but I will always take the time to add Beatle lyrics. Now, I'm not going to talk a lot about the details contained in this week's Parsha, because next Sabbath, is Passover. So I want to talk just a little about the Parsha, then I want to talk about Passover. Your preparation, how you might look at it, how you might do it a little differently than you have done it before, and how you can make a greater difference in the lives of everyone around you. Now, I heard a fantastic line the other day, and it really stuck in my mind. Okay. And, it went, people hear what they see. And I thought about it. And it's called synesthesia. And it's from the Greek, and it's together and sensation, is one word. And so it's an intermingling of senses. And it's quite the study, apparently. So apparently visual is the most dominant modality among people. And studies have found that this condition of synesthesia affects many artists who see colors when they hear certain music. Now, I tend to hear the sounds of the vibration of the energy that our eyes see all the time. In fact, I hear music all the time. And as Bobby Darin saying, as long as I'm singing, then the world's all right and everything's swinging. Long as I'm singing my song. And I'm sure you all have the songs that you like to sing. Friends, we are preparing for the Festival of Freedom. So sing your song and bring and engage your senses to your sacred practices. While you do, here we have God continuing his instructions to Moses, Tzav, command. Friends, much of this parsha continues with the priestly rules that we began. But remember, the book of Leviticus is a book of strict rules. This book does not contemplate morals or ethics. It is purely about ritual. And ritual is black and white. It is law. It is not interpretation. And that is why so many have a hard time with it. This is a book of instructions. And one of its Hebrew names, Torah Kohanim, could aptly be translated as priestly instructions. It emphasizes rules. That's it. It's all rules. Rules such as that of the perpetual flame, that it is to be maintained. Right? It's flame on the altar all night till morning, and the fire of the altar shall keep burning on in it. The eternal flame, or as we saw, the renewed flame, has become one of the most dominant of all visual images, to be seen in each sanctuary you enter anywhere in the world. In this book of priestly rites, we're also exposed to the idea of a contagion of holiness. And that's symmetrical with the more common idea of a contagion of impurity. Objects that come in contact with consecrated substances, such as the grain offering, themselves become consecrated and can no longer be used for profane purposes. Coming in contact with holy makes you holy. The emphasis is simply on ritual. Right? It's only ritual. The change of clothing to be worn in sacred zones, the sacred fire in the tabernacle not going out. These are the things that hold place and time together. And we have this unification of space and time, but it's about bringing symbol to life. Now, ultimately, we see that Moses directs Aaron and his sons to eat the sacrificial meal at the entrance of the tent of meeting, aka the tabernacle, from which they're not permitted to depart for 7 days. And on the 8th day, another series of sacrifices is pictured, but it is no longer Moses who performs them, but rather Aaron and his sons. Then Aaron blesses the people, and for the first time he enters the tent of meeting alongside Moses. When they come out, they bless the people together. The glory of the Lord appears to the people. Divine fire comes and consumes the offering, and the people shout and fall to the ground. But just see what happens from Leviticus 8:7 to the end. In one session, we have the burnt offering, an installation offering, a fire offering, an elevation offering. And you wonder why there are so many and how you keep them apart in your mind. Well, don't try and keep them apart in your mind. Moses bathes Aaron and his sons in water. So we have our cleansing ritual. He dresses them. He anoints them in oil, the dedication element. He slaughters the bull and ram and puts the blood on the horns of the altar itself, and on the specific extremities of the priest, the right ear, the right thumb, the right big toe. And so we have the demonstration of the sacredness of blood. And he burns the meat as an offering to God and lights the incense and invokes the divine use of fire. Again, all those elements coming into play, but all of them as symbols of ritual. Okay. So here we have this interplay of senses in the process that we witness. There's the sight, the sound, the tactility of the washing, the dressing and anointing, the scent and taste of the burning and the incense. And all of these things, work together, right? They have this interplay, and they bring our own senses along as we feel, we smell, we sense this process. We become a part of this process, right? We can picture it in our mind's eye. We are overwhelmed by things because we don't think of our senses anymore, right? Life is simply overwhelming. But these sacred steps of worship and commemoration help bring our senses back into focus and remind us of this process of holiness. It's all about these steps, this symbol, these stages, this ritual of engaging in holiness. Okay. Now the Parsha ends with Aaron and his son sitting for 7 days at the tabernacle's entrance, preparing for the climax that's coming in the next installment, building anticipation for the inauguration of the priesthood. And so if we follow the weekly cycle of readings of the Torah, we emulate what is happening in the text because we are about to wait for 7 days. Now, to be sure that we get the connection, the next Parsha is titled Shemini, 8th. And if we pay proper attention to this, we come to the story of the inauguration with anticipation. So we appreciate the story, and we appreciate the power of what goes wrong in the story, the catastrophe of Nadab and Abihu. And I'm sure if you noticed, my friends, this Parsha ends with one of the most important changes that has haunted man for all time. By handling the priestly functions and all future sacrifice to Aaron and his sons, suddenly the separation of church and state becomes embedded in a system of law, belief, ethics, and ritual. All sacrifices, all priestly function becomes the province of Aaron and his family for all time. And government of the people belongs to Moses. And just look how well that separation is done. It is still argued about to this day. Now, this year is different. That continuity will be several weeks away. You see, next week's Pesach, and the reading is Exodus 12:21, an interesting reading in its own. And the following week is the traditional Chol HaMoed, the intermediate days, with its own reading. So it's going to be a few weeks before we get back to Shemini 8th. And so we're not just waiting a week, so we're not just living the aspects of the Torah here. But so allow yourselves, my friends, in the meantime, to be swept away in the process of holiness in all the things you do. Because you do most of them daily without thinking of it. The washing, the oil, all the rest. So why not think of it as you get ready for the holy day of Passover and the performance of your seders? We wash, we light candles. Some of us mark our doorposts with blood, and those that don't picture it. And we eat foods that are different, invoking taste and scent. We make ourselves holy in the process, and we eat the bread of holiness, the bread of the priest, matzah, the egoless bread that does not rise. This, my friends, is the oldest ritual in the religion. The calendar, the laws, the holy days all stem from this. This is the celebration of freedom. It defined a nation and a spirit. And well before your time, in fact, you'd probably have to go back to before Rabbinic Judaism, this was the most important holy day in the year. And I want to thank you for letting me share some of my thoughts with you. It is a time of celebration. So whatever you do, have some fun. It's a time for families to celebrate together, a time to teach your children about freedom. Teach your children well. Their father's hell did slowly go by. And feed them on your dreams, the ones they fix, the one you'll know by. This is a holiday of freedom, of overcoming fear, of believing in yourself, of having faith in God and in self. And what better lesson can you teach? What better example can you be? Friends, for too many of us, our lives are filled with strife, turmoil, battle, and fear. Yes, we have happy too. but we fight too much. Do not make this a day of reading a book. Instead, come and sing a simple song of freedom. Sing it like you never did before. Let it fill the air. Tell the people everywhere, we the people here don't need a war. Now, over time, we've seen a certain amount of fun, frivolity, and modernization work its way, thankfully, into our observance of Passover. Right? And we're going to, basically in 20 minutes cover all of the essential things of Passover. And one of the things that I like so much is the modern songs that have been injected. Right? These days, the songs that you get at Passover are fantastic songs. And one of my favorites, and I'm sure one of yours, as baseball season approaches, is that classic, Take Me Out to the Seder. Take me out to the Seder with friends and family. Serve me some matzah and 4 cups of wine. Ask me 4 questions, and we will be fine. And it's root, root, root for Elijah, that he will soon reappear. And let's hope that we'll meet once again next year. How cool is that? I love the modern songs of Passover. And what a night. I can't remember the last time the 2 most sacred days in the calendar lined up, Sabbath and Passover. You'd have to go back a while. And just as I talk about the twin festivals of light at Christmas and Hanukkah, we have a threesome here, because those aforementioned holy days are joined by the other great festival of freedom. You see, this year, this is also Good Friday. And it's not just good. It's great when the world comes together in love and in honoring freedom. Good Friday, a chance to be free from sin. Passover, a chance to be free from fear. Sabbath, a chance to cease to be holy and to be like God. I will take those anytime I can. Now, the beginning of the year marks the time of promise and hope. And we are at the beginning of the spiritual year, recognized in so many cultures as the start of the year. It is our time to celebrate freedom. We have started with a clean slate. Let us keep it that way. Now, in the Torah, this is actually called the Festival of Unleavened Bread. Matzah, not Passover. Many of you do not like matzah. And friends, the great book by Isaac Klein, A Guide to Jewish Religious Practice, a fabulous conservative manual of Judaism, actually says, and I was somewhat stunned to see this, but it says the eating of matzah is an obligation only at the Seder and is optional during the rest of Pesach. And I'm sure many of you will be glad at that, although the Torah does say in Exodus 12:19, on the 14th day of the month in the evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month in the evening. And don't forget, this is called the Festival of Unleavened Bread. So, those of you who want, take the Isaac Klein view of Seder only, but for everybody else, it's for a whole week, and I'm going to explain why. Now, we're also told one of the great illusions of truth. We're told it is the bread of affliction. I cannot think of a Haggadah that you may read which does not say so. But that is not what the Torah says. It tells us that unleavened bread is the food of the priest. It is eaten with the meat of the sacrifices. Leaven is seen as something inappropriate for the holy realm. Now, perhaps because its power in the process of making bread rise is seen as the ego of man, which is also the thing that rises. On Passover, my friends, all Israelites are invited to behave like priests, eating no leaven. It is the bread of holiness, and we are a holy nation to God. Now, there's an age-old belief, my friends, that when an enemy seeks to destroy you, you need to feel as much hatred for him as he feels for you. Now, pretty well all of military history says this. But all of Jewish history says the contrary. The Jewish people have never had recourse to hatred, even in their struggles for survival. And so you have to see that Passover, in addition to being a story of freedom, is also a story of hope. And so on this evening, all questions are not only permitted, but invited. And there's two sets of four which we tend to get lost in an examination of. As we see the traditional four questions, the manishtana halayla hazeh mikol halaylot. We all grew up learning those. They are illustrated by four possible attitudes towards life. That of the wise son, who knows the question and asks it. That of the wicked son, who knows the question but refuses to ask it. That of the simple son, who knows the question but is indifferent to it. And finally, that of the ignorant son, who does not know the question and therefore is unable to ask. But today, my friends, there is a fifth son, the one who chooses to be absent and has no interest in God, the Torah, the fight for freedom, the epiphany, and our thought should be turning more to the missing, this lost child than any other. Focus on those lost children. They are our future. And we need to focus on other questions. We need to focus on the questions that try our lives. And in every generation, those questions are just a little different. And that is what makes it a perpetual observance. It is about bringing new questions to play. Now, the Passover Seder is a time of symbols. The entire evening is composed of them. The table is built around them, with the Passover plate as the most well-known. So here is a picture of the most well-known Passover plate. I hope you can all see that. It's the round. It's got the 5 things on it. Okay. And it's the one we're all used to seeing. I personally like to use a star as my Passover plate. I like the symbol of the star. And it contains 6 items. And I put one in each corner. And I like that better than the traditional round ones, with the 5. And some of the round ones actually have 6, but I like to use 6. The entire story of the Haggadah is contained in the Seder plate. You don't need anything else other than the Seder plate in order to tell the entire story of Passover. Everything on it symbolizes an aspect of Exodus. Zroa, the roasted shank bone of the lamb, the dominant sacrificial animal of the Torah, right? It reminds us of the story of Abraham, and it evokes the paschal lamb which our forefathers offered to God and ate as the meat. Beitzah, the boiled egg, whose roundness symbolizes the circle of life in all universal cultures. Life, death, all represented by the egg. Karpas, green vegetable. Usually it's parsley, my friends, the first fruit of the season of the earth, and we tend to dip it in salt water to remind us of our tears. Maror, a bitter herb, to remind us of the bitterness of Egyptian bondage, slavery, right? Charoseth, the putting together of the fruits, the apple, the walnut, and all to remind us of the bricks in building the pyramids. And my 6th is matzah, the bread of affliction and hurry, which did not rise because we left so quickly. Now, this technically tells the entire story. This is tradition. Now, the Seder as we know it and practice it is primarily from after the Second Temple period and later. And that's one of the reasons why the Torah appears so silent on it. But friends, I think you should feel free to create your own unique celebration of freedom, combining what God instructs Moses with what tradition has formed. And tradition changes over time. For example, the traditional plate named the Baba is from Second Temple times, just as the practice of eating reclining and the Roman tradition of eating on a triclinium, a dining couch, which hints at the 4th of the 4 questions, has not been practiced in a long time. Times change. And now, of course, you often see oranges as part of the Seder plate, and I welcome any and all changes that reflect your ability to share and teach freedom and keep the living history alive. Now, friends, what you need to realize is this evening, no matter how you follow it, is an evening of sensual invocation, and it's about ritual and symbol. We start with the washing. Now, some books say that everyone does, and some say only the leader. But it is a sacred cleanse, and it creates holy space for you. We dip the parsley, the carpus, in salt water. We say something about spring in our tears. But that's not what it is. It actually represents the dipping of hyssop in blood, which was used to mark the doorposts and lintels. And so we can recreate that immortal moment in time. The haroset could not really represent the pyramid mortar, since the Israelites did not really build the pyramids, but it does represent mortar. It had a mystical formula comprised of the 3 roots and 7 fruits from the trees of the Garden of Eden, representing the tree of life. And as such, it represents the mortar that holds the universe together, my friends. And of course, that mortar is love. The maror, or bitter herbs, reminding us of Egyptian slavery, is really a reminder to us that the name for Egypt in biblical times was Mitzrayim, the root of which is Mem Tzadi Resh Meitzir, which means to limit, to bind, to restrict the things we do to ourselves, to imprison ourselves in fear. And we eat the maror, not just to remind us of the bitter past, but because we can survive bitterness, and from it comes the sweet taste of freedom and life. We are survivors. And friends, take a moment to remember and honor the Holocaust survivors. There is a danger in forgetting, in distancing ourselves too much. And the matzah is the bread of holiness and the priest, and allows us to be priest-like for the 7 days of holiness. That, my friends, is a personal honoring of tradition. This was a unique event in man's history. It was the first event which showed God as the Redeemer from tyranny. It made God something to look to and not to fear. The conception of God as the Redeemer of the oppressed revolutionized the meaning and functions of religion and placed it at the service of the ethical impulses. In the words of a contemporary theologian, what makes the Exodus from Egypt a pattern of redemption for all mankind is the interpretation of the prophet who sees God as a redeemer from tyranny. The God of Israel makes history the place where man progresses to freedom. And the great scholar Rav Kook wrote about freedom. And he said the difference between a slave and a free man is not only a difference in status, that is, that by a matter of chance, one person is subject to another person and another person is not. We can find a wise bondman whose spirit is filled with freedom, and a free man who has the spirit of a slave. Authentic freedom is the exalted spirit to which a man and a people as a whole are elevated, so that one is faithful to his inner self, to the image of God that is within him. So, friends, why is this night different from all other nights? Well, the 4 Manishtana questions that appear in pretty well all texts are actually different from those found in earlier versions of the Haggadah. The original Manishtana seems to have included only 3 questions. On all other nights, we do not dip herbs in any condiment. On this night, we dip them twice. On all other nights, we eat chametz and matzah. On this night, only matzah. On all other nights, we eat all kinds of herbs. On this night, only bitter herbs. These 3 questions, my friends, correspond to the 3 main foods eaten at the Seder, the ones I spoke of, and the entire story can be told around those 3 things. Motzi and Mor are in trouble with pharaohs, famines and locusts and slaves with wheelbarrows, matzah balls floating in eggshell that clings. These are a few of our Passover things. Friends, the story of freedom from slavery, from anything, is now a universal concept. The power of God in punishing the Egyptians with plagues is known by every child. Now, for many, the recitation of the plagues is a favorite part of the Passover Seder. But did you notice that the plagues arrive in pairs, in increasing levels from inconvenience to destruction? Blood, dam, and frogs, tzfardea, both involve water. Lice, kinim, and swarming creatures, erov, both arrive in hordes. Pestilence, dever, and boils, shechin, are diseases. Hail, barad, and locusts, arba, are blights from the sky that destroy crops. And darkness, choshech, and the death of the firstborn, makat bacharot, represent the final and ultimate punishment. But it goes further than that, my friends. You see, the 10 plagues are presented as a counterpoint to creation. You see, the pairing of plagues also sees them organized into a division which plays off with the tripartite description of creation in Genesis 1. Days 1 and 4 focus on the sky, days 2 and 5 on the water, days 3 and 6 on the land. Well, similarly, the plagues 1 and 2 are about the water, 4 and 5 are about the land, and 7 and 8 are about the sky. These lead up to the 9th plague, darkness, evocative of the world prior to the days of creation. Now the earth was empty, and darkness was on the face of the deep. And to further the Genesis association, the Torah emphasizes that the Egyptians were trapped by the darkness and unable to move for the 3 days, whereas the Israelites had light in their homes and moved freely. A contrast that also recalls to us the first act of creation, in which God separated light from darkness. And of course, the plagues culminate with the Egyptians drowning in the sea, conjuring up images of the flood, God's first undoing of creation. It's an evening of symbol, my friends. The Passover celebration commemorates an event which will probably symbolize for all time the essential meaning of freedom, namely freedom directed to a purpose. When Israel came forth from bondage, it was not simply to enjoy liberty, but to make liberty an instrument of service. These are the stories of freedom you should be telling. Your story is the story of freedom you should be telling. Haggadah does not mean read a book. Although the book we read from is called the Haggadah, it is a word that means to tell. And it's derived from Exodus 13:8. V'haggadah lodeber bayom hahu, and thou shalt tell thy son. And we are told to tell the story of freedom as if we are telling about ourselves and our freedom. Well, tell about yourself. Tell them about you. Tell them everything you feel. Give them every reason to accept that you're for real. Friends, newness and change is good. What are the important things? Is it reading a book many people dread or do not understand or do not actually care about? Counting the paragraphs until it's your turn? Or is it about discussing, asking questions, remembering, sharing? You have an opportunity to demonstrate to the people around you what steps you took to free yourself from your Mitzrayim, your confinement, and in so doing, influencing all those around you to free themselves too. And having watched Annie get your gun the other night, all I can say is there's no Seder like your Seder. There's no Seder I know. Everything about it is halakhic. Nothing that the Torah won't allow. Listen how we read the whole Haggadah. It's all in Hebrew because we know how. Most of us actually don't know how. Allow yourselves, my friends, to be swept away in the process of holiness in all these things you do. You do most of them daily without thinking of it, so think of it as you get ready for the holy day of Passover and perform your Seders. We wash, we light candles. Some of us mark our doorposts with blood, and those that don't, picture it. And we eat foods that are different, invoking taste and scent and history and meaning. We make ourselves holy in the process, and we eat the bread of holiness, the bread of the priest, matzah, the egoless bread that does not rise. Celebrate the symbols. Celebrate the freedom. Friends, have a fantastic festival of flatbread and celebrate your freedom. Honor your tabernacle, your dwelling place of God. Celebrate your life and free yourselves from fear. Love you all. Live free, be free, and honor your freedom. Be well, be happy, be blessed. Share and honor the light in all who live in the light, and continue to shine. Continue to send everyone you know goodwill and love. Pray for peace and freedom for everyone, and end to terror and hatred. And remember, friends, we are a community. We learn together. We celebrate each other. We love each other. Thank you all. Love you. See you all next time. Have a fantastic Festival of Freedom and a fantastic year. Bless you all. Shabbat Shalom. Take care. Bye.